Here we go again. According to a new paper that was out of Johns Hopkins and published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, fasting doesn't matter. Eating less meals doesn't matter. All that matters is eating less food. Okay, on the surface, this sounds fairly benign, right? I understand. Yeah, I would agree. Eating less food is very, very important. But what they've essentially distilled out of this paper and put out into the masses, like Bloomberg Business put out, what a bunch of, God, they put out there, they say, intermittent fasting does not work. Okay, meal frequency is what matters. You should be eating smaller, more frequent meals. Okay, we're going back to like 1990 Muscle and Fitness magazine here. Are we seriously going back there? Okay, I don't want to get on my high horse with that. Let's just break down the data in this study because there are serious issues, and I don't care if you have zero scientific experience. I challenge you to pinpoint the main problem of this study, because I bet you'll be able to figure it out. So if you figure it out, comment it down below in the comment section, even as the video is going, because I'm curious. You don't have to be scientific minded to figure out what's wrong with this study. So this study aimed to measure meal intervals and ultimately determine weight trajectory based upon how frequently people were eating. It was a 6-month study with 547 people. You know what they did to track all of this? They had to download a mobile app. That's how you got into this study. You downloaded a mobile app and you tracked your food. On the surface, sounds somewhat acceptable. We live in the digital age, but no, let's break it down a little bit more. Essentially what they found with this study is that the mean interval between the first meal of the day and the last meal of the day was about 11 and a half hours. Okay, so from the time someone woke up and had breakfast to the time they had their last meal was about 11 and a half hours, 12 and a half hours of not eating. Okay, well, we'll break that down more in just a second. What they found is that the time between the first and last meal made no difference in the weight change. Okay, but what they did find is that the frequency of meals, the number of meals, did correlate with weight loss. And what they found is that larger meals tended to lead to more weight gain over time. Okay, so that was their data. That was enough data for them to say, well, if you have larger meals and they're infrequent, you're going to gain more weight than if you have slightly smaller meals and eat them more frequently. Well, yes, I suppose that's true if calories were actually accounted for in a reasonable fashion, and if someone was eating more, they might gain more weight. So essentially they took this and they said, if you eat large meals in a short period of time, you're going to gain weight. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, but there was a huge flaw with how they extrapolated this. Basically, they said with this is that more frequency is better. Period. And they plastered that everywhere, pushed it out to social media, so all the fasting haters have been having a heyday with it, posting out, we told you, it's actually worse. Let's look. Remember how I mentioned the average time between the first and the last meal was 11 and a half hours? Well, that means what they considered fasting was 12 and a half hours. Now, if you're a veteran of this channel or you've watched even 5 seconds of one of my videos, you would probably know that that's not fasting. Like, it kind of counts, definitely. It's definitely good to eat in a 12-hour block at least. But to call a 12 and a half hour fast intermittent fasting, that's like criminal. If you're not going beyond that length of time in a fast, you're barely even tapping into fat as a fuel source. You're still predominantly running on glucose, which means you're not ever really getting this lipolysis benefit that you would get from fasting. Now, I don't expect people on social media to really figure that out and understand that, and well, I'll be damned to have maybe a little bit of critical thinking to maybe figure that out, but that's probably the primary benefit of intermittent fasting, is being able to shift to a different fuel source, whether that's for fat loss, weight loss, or just for different nuclear receptor proteins to be activated, different gene changes, gene expression, circadian cues, whatever. Shifting from glucose utilization to fat utilization is like the flippin' point. So essentially what this study said is that meal size and meal frequency matter. Well, no duh. Of course it matters. How much you eat and how frequently you eat matters. So they did dive a little deeper and they said, okay, well, we wanted to look at the size of meals. What we found is that if people ate larger meals more frequently, they gained weight. Yeah. But if they ate smaller meals more frequently, they lost weight. Like, what are we, kindergartners? Like, this is ridiculous. Let me spell this out for you. If you are fasting for 16 hours, you have 8 hours to eat. Okay, you are probably not going to eat 4 large meals in an 8-hour window. You just don't have the stomach size for that. But if you have a 12.5-hour fast and you have 11.5 hours, you probably could eat 4 larger meals because you have more time to eat. Longer the fast, less time to eat. Less time to eat, less chance to overeat. Why are we saying this is a bad thing? Oh wait, I forgot. We like to be divided and we like to fight. Now, I'm gonna get into some other things that are gonna make you absolutely laugh your butt off. Again, don't even need scientific rigor to figure this out. But when you do have shorter eating periods, it becomes very important that you pay attention to what you eat. It becomes very important that you get the right macronutrient profiles in. It becomes very important that you get good micronutrients and good nutrition and good hydration. One of the things that this study left out is they didn't even look at macronutrient composition. How many fats, how many carbs, how much protein, things that kind of matter when it comes down to weight loss. They only looked at frequency and food size overall. Again, pretty crazy. If you are fasting, I popped a link down below for Thrive Market. The reason I mentioned them is because they don't just have stuff for the pantry. Okay, people always think, oh, Thrive Market, it's just processed stuff. No, the 30% off discount link down below saves you 30% off their sustainable meat and seafood options. Okay, so they have chicken, they have beef, they have fish, but they also have, of course, the things that you would put in your pantry. But the whole idea behind Thrive Market is to not have processed stuff. So I highly recommend if you're fasting that you check them out. And the reason I mention that is because that link down below for 30% off your first order, you can check out my fasting bundles. So you can check out the kinds of foods I recommend you have during your eating period to try to get adequate micronutrient and macronutrient composition. So anyway, that link down below is a special discount link. So it's 30% off your entire first order plus a $50 free gift, and then your groceries get delivered directly to your doorstep. Makes it super, super easy. So if you're fasting, it does kind of spell it out for you. Or if you're doing low carb, it spells it out for you. That's why, in my opinion, it's literally better than a grocery store. People think, oh, grocery store, Thrive, same kind of, no, it's like an elevated grocery store that kind of does the brain work for you. So that link down below. Okay, I hope you're ready to laugh. And if you're a cool person that stuck with me through the sponsorship portion of this video, now you get to chuckle. You wanna know how they measured the food? So in this cool app, that was the requirement for the study, they had a drop-down menu. And this drop-down menu allowed them to select small meal, 500 calories or less, medium-sized meal, 500 to 1,000 calories, or select large meal, over 1,000 calories. So we put the fate of fasting into 3 tiers in a drop-down menu on a mobile app. And let's also add the fact that how many people do you know in your life, friends, family, extended friends and family, that actually know how to look at a plate of food and determine how many calories are in it? I am pretty darn good at what I do, and I would say I can really estimate food well, but I would probably say that even when I look at a plate of food that's coming from a restaurant or something, it's probably coming with like a delta of maybe like 20 or 30% in terms of like how far off I could be. Like, that's pretty much what we're seeing on average, but with people that have no idea what they're doing, it's probably even more. Okay, well, let's make it a little bit harder. They also told people that, well, you can log your food as long as you're not logging it 48 hours or more after you ate it. Most people can't remember what they had for breakfast. They can barely remember what they had for dinner. And you're asking them to try to remember something, not the day before, but the day before that, and calculate it with accuracy within 3 tiers. And then you're gonna tell me that fasting doesn't work because Bob Smith tracked food from Thursday on Saturday and had to rough estimate how much was on his plate at IHOP. We're doomed. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Anyone that used the app for over a day was allowed to be in it. So you had to use the app for at least 1 day. Like, bottom line is, I could pick apart this study. I understand what goes into creating a study. I've been involved in studies. I know what goes into it. I know they're hard. I know they're expensive. I have absolutely nothing negative to say about Johns Hopkins, nothing negative to say about the researchers. What I get upset about is the interpretation and how we have become just this over-marketed, nonsensical thing where we take science and then we create it and truncate it into one or two sentences so that it's sensationalized for social media, so that people fight and there's virality and then it goes where it needs to go. But nobody actually gives a dang what the actual outcome is. If you eat a lot of food, and you eat a lot of food a lot of times a day, you're gonna gain weight. If you eat less food, you will lose weight. If you eat less food in smaller time, you will probably lose a lot of weight. And you'll probably sleep well. And you'll probably feel better. And your spouse will probably love you more. And you'll probably have a cooler looking dog.